Hi there, welcome to tutorial 26. Today we're going to be looking at electric piano sounds, and it's going to be spread over 26 and 27, and we're not going to be using any sample sounds during this. We're just going to use the features on the Studiologic version 1 synth. We're going to be looking at virtual analog synthesis, subtractive synthesis, a little bit of additive synthesis, wavetable synthesis, and FM. So here's the four sounds that are going to be covered in the two tutorials, starting with a Wurlitzer sound. Here's a DX7 type one. Here's another DX7. And here's a Rhodes sound with some effects. Okay, the first sound that we'll look at is the Wurlitzer type sound, which uses the virtual analog subtractive synthesis method. And I'll just explain a few details as I go along. We're going to start with the initial setting, which gives us that. And today we're going to be working from right to left. So I'm going to be setting up reverb, for example. Reverb time 54. Level 22, no chorus this time. We're going to set up the velocity, which is something that I haven't used very much previously. So about 73. Now the velocity not only affects the amplifier settings, but it also affects the filter a little bit as well. But we'll set up the amplifier envelope first of all. Attack time 0, decay 73, sustain level 43, and release 41. And then move on to the filter envelope. The amount of that is 24. And the attack time 0, decay 72, sustain 60, and release 37. Now, all of the alterations that I've made, you won't really be able to hear a lot of them being particularly effective, apart from the reverb. Because the filter is fully open. Here we're going to be using a 24 dB slope on the filter, cut off 35. You can hear it going very mellow there. Open it up to 35. This gives us our percussive sort of effect. Resonance nil, key track 71. Okay, now over to the oscillators. And on most virtual analog synths, you have the same or very similar set of options for the waveforms. So we're going to be looking at oscillator 1, 16 foot, pulse wave. This gives us a kind of a reedy sound. And the pulse width is 71, that's 71%. There we are. And it gives that slightly reedy quality. On oscillator 2, we also want 16 foot, put that one in. And this is on a square wave. That gives us a sort of hollow quality. So that's pretty much the sound, except on the Sledge we've got a third oscillator, which we can use to add some harmonics to the sound. Now, I'll switch the oscillator 3 in, fully up, and I'm going to put a 2 foot pitch in there, and you can hear that, which is going to be 3 octaves above oscillators 1 and 2, but I'm going to back it off by 2 semitones. And adding that harmonic in is a kind of additive synthesis method, although traditionally with additive synthesis you'd use all sine waves at different frequencies. Here we want a square wave for that 2-foot pitch, and we need to balance up these sounds now on the mixer, and we can back off that high harmonic to 64, and there's our Wurlitzer sound. Okay, now we're going to be looking at a DX7 type sound, and of course the DX7 was one of the first digital synthesizers, and that used FM frequency modulation as a sound source. One of the digital sound sources that we've got on the Sledge, and I'll just put it to the initial setting for a second, oscillator 1, is the wavetable. Now the wavetable means, let's hear some of those sounds. Just hold on a second, do that once again. That's better. On the wavetable, I've selected the wavetable there, and we can scroll through the 66 digital waves in the wavetable. Now, back in the late 70s, a guy called Wolfgang Palm introduced the first digital synthesizers before the DX7, and he used wavetables. And it's a way of creating a complex waveform by a lookup table with different numerical values. So it creates sort of almost random waveforms depending on which of the numerical values are sampled at any particular time. So for this DX7 sound, we're going to be using wavetable number 27. And you can hear there's quite an odd set of harmonics in that. But we'll also set up the synth from right to left, as we did before. So first of all, we've got some reverb. Reverb tone 63. Level 26. There's our reverb. And we need a little bit of chorus for this. And the default chorus setting is rate 20. And we're going to back off the level a little bit to 46. Okay, and we're going to set up the amplifier envelope. Velocity 56. And the amplifier envelope, attack 0, decay 70. Sustain would normally be 127, but we'll back that off to 9. So the sound actually disappears after a while, giving a very percussive effect. But we've got some release time there as well, 31. This pretty much gives us that digital sound just from one oscillator, but I'm going to switch oscillator 1 to 16 foot. And that's given us a very, very digital kind of sound. But we're also going to use oscillator 2 on 16 foot, but we're now going to use a sine wave. Now a sine wave normally would be a very pure sound, and let's hear the sine wave on its own, pure sound. But we can alter the frequency modulation of oscillator 2 by oscillator 1, and that's known as FM synthesis. And as I put this knob up, you can hear the increase in higher harmonics which is kind of what DX7's used. We need a value of 50 here because we're going to mix it with oscillator 1. There we are. And it's a little bit of a thin sound, so we're going to also put oscillator 3 on 16 foot, a sine wave, but now we're not going to use very much frequency modulation at all, just a tiny bit. There we are. And that's our DX7 sound. We could also introduce a tiny bit of noise in there, and this is on the noise selection there, pink noise. Let's hear that on its own. Wow. We're going to mix that with oscillators 1, 2 and 3, but we only need a very small amount. There we are. And that's your DX7 type sound.